And to Newswatch, tennis great Margaret Court has been absolutely smashed by the media for not supporting gay marriage, and commentators were demanding that Tennis Australia not honour the 50th anniversary of Margaret Court winning the Grand Slam that year in, well, 1970, when she claimed all 4 major tennis tournaments. Well, despite that pressure, Tennis Australia did yesterday honour Court at the Australian Open after all, although it made sure it didn't broadcast it, which is a shame. And it seems again that journalists might just be out of touch with the public. You see, the Sydney Morning Herald, for instance, had a blurb online: mixed reaction at the Australian Open as Margaret Court is honoured. But when you check the story itself, it admitted that Court was received well by the crowd. Joining me again for Newswatch this year is Gerard Henderson, head of the Sydney Institute, columnist with the Australian and author of the fabulous Media Watchdog blog, out every Friday. Gerard, great to see you again.
Thank you.
Sydney Morning Herald story admitting, oh, well, the crowd received Court well, it then had to shop around for criticism of her from celebrities and commentators, some of them made days ago, just to, you know, give her a what for. What does this tell you?
Well, it does tell you that so many journalists are out of touch. The people who make tennis possible in Australia are the people who pay to attend or who watch the game on television, which attracts advertisers. They're the people who matter. And many of them, or some of them, were inside the Rod Laver Arena last night. And the reports are that Margaret Court was extremely well received. There is not one report about any kind of protest. So the protests come not from the tennis fans inside Rod Laver Arena, but from people outside. Now, another example of this is if you look at how ordinary Australians and ordinary people from overseas who love tennis and are supporting the tennis, they reacted positively to the greatest women tennis player of her time, and one of the greatest of all time. They reacted very positively because they understood her record. I mean, after all, she was one of the, well, I think the first woman tennis player who trained with the man and did what the man did with weights and gymnasium, and that's what made her so successful. They gave her a very warm welcome. But if you go back and have a look on the ABC, for example, the ABC TV program Offsiders, and if you look at the comments made by Peter Fitzsimons of 9 newspapers, the guy who wears the red bandana or the red rag on his head, the red bandana man, they were extremely hostile before this. I mean, they were lecturing Tennis Australia not to go anywhere near Margaret Court because, you know, how unpopular she was and how she would shame the game. And, of course, they were, as with so many journalists, they were completely out of touch, as was evident last night. Now, it is sad, I think, that the actual incident was not recorded, but it is filmed, and there are reports of what happened, and Rod Laver performed very well, and Margaret Court performed very well, as you would expect, and it was a triumph for her, and a triumph for everyone who admires her career in tennis over many decades.
Well, you know, I've always had a beef that somebody in the media consider it more important what she simply said about same-sex marriage, not what she's actually done, as in terms not just of a tennis career. The fact that the Christian church that she has founded over in Perth gives so much aid every week to so many families, somehow that never gets mentioned to her credit. And I think that is far more important, what people do. But listen, Gerard, we've got here many in the media unwilling to honour a conservative sports star who said something they don't like. Let me turn now to a very different case, Kobe Bryant. Now, Bryant is a basketball superstar who died this week in a helicopter crash, and among all the hero worship he got, and a lot of it's deserved, one Washington Post reporter tweeted a link to a past story about him, about a woman who'd accused Bryant of rape. Now, Bryant said that the sex they had was consensual, but he did reach a deal with her where he did issue a statement saying, I now understand how she feels that she did not consent to this encounter. Now, Gerard, just for linking to that story, the Washington Post reporter has been suspended by a newspaper, even though it was once right on board the Me Too movement. Your reaction?
Well, I'm not surprised, really. I mean, there are certain people you are able to criticise, and there are other people you are not able to criticise. And That's what's happened with the reporter. In this instance, she's been stood down, but she was only commenting on a reported fact, which the person concerned had not really denied. So you can say, look, she might have left the time in for a day or so, but she was only reporting. Now imagine what would happen if President Trump came down in a helicopter and died. And do you think for a minute that the various allegations against President Trump, that journalists would be suspended by the Washington Post for reporting them? And if that's not the case, then what you've got again here is a notorious double standard, that if you are some person who's regarded by the media as on-side or progressive, you'll be protected. And if you're someone who's regarded by the media as conservative, you'll be attacked. So I doubt whether the Washington Post will have the courage to dismiss this journalist. After all, she's only done her job. But certainly she's been hounded, she's been vilified, she's been threatened. As I understand it from the Washington Post's own report, she's been threatened with both murder and rape. So this is a very serious incident, and she's not been protected by the Washington Post. But again, it's just
extraordinary.
It's just
it's like the Me Too movement didn't happen.
Yeah,
it's like the Me Too movement didn't happen.
Yeah.
You know, as if Harvey Weinstein, if he died tomorrow, all the papers were full of praise of his movies, and no one would say about the rape conviction or the rape allegations he's now facing. It's really quite weird. But I know these rules, you know, some lose and some gain. Ask Bruce Pascoe. Sometimes the media does protect other people.